Welcome to BC Hardwood. Today we'll be discussing health and safety in the workplace. By the end of this video, you should be able to answer these questions. What are the hazards of the workplace and of the materials to which I may be exposed? How am I protected from these hazards? What do I do in the event of an emergency? Where do I get more detailed information? At BC Hardwood, the health and safety of our employees is the #1 priority. Throughout this video, you'll be educated on all the possible dangers in the workplace and what to do if an accident occurs. Detailed copies of all procedures can be obtained through your foreman and are also available online on the company's G Drive. We believe the best approach to providing a safe work environment is to follow all procedures in place and keep ourselves updated with new rules and regulations. We also make sure that all workers have proper WHMIS training and forklift certification. As a worker, you have the right to refuse unsafe work. It is your duty to report any hazards or injuries to your site supervisor, and you are responsible for following all procedures properly. To receive more information regarding the Act or the Occupational Health and Safety Report, please speak to your foreman or check the BC Hardwood G Drive. A copy of the rights and responsibilities can also be found here. If an injury occurs in the workplace, notify the first aid attendant on site immediately. The first aid attendant will check the severity of the injury and fill out all necessary paperwork. Remember, if you are injured, do not drive yourself to the hospital. Emergency evacuation in case of fire. Anyone discovering a fire, smoke, strong smell of burning, or of an unusual nature should immediately pull the fire alarm. If it is safe and you are trained to do so, use the correct fire extinguisher to put out the fire. Begin evacuation procedures as outlined throughout the building. Once evacuated, inform the authorities of the location and nature of the fire, the unsafe exits, persons requiring assistance, and other pertinent details. Remain available to the responding security agents to provide details for the incident report. In the event of a fire alarm in your building, secure any hazardous materials before leaving and perform any required equipment shutdown procedures. Evacuate the premises in a swift, orderly fashion using the nearest safe exit. Move completely away from the building, go to the designated muster point as directed by the evacuation team, or move at least 100 meters away from the building. Next, let's talk about fall prevention and what to do if a fall occurs. When out at a job site, make sure that all handrails and guardrails are in place. If they need to be removed to do part of the job, ensure that they are put back immediately after the work in that area is complete. If you fall at all, whether on site or at the warehouse, please see the first aid attendant as soon as possible. Let your foreman know right away and do not continue working until you have been checked out. You may need to use a ladder while in the warehouse, so let's discuss proper use and storage of all ladders. First, inspect the ladder and make sure that all steps are in place and secure. Do not use a ladder that may be missing steps or looks damaged. When you set the ladder up, make sure all locks are in place and that the ladder is flat and secure. It is important when lifting heavy objects to make sure you lift with your knees. Lifting with your back can cause injury. If you are carrying an object or piece of equipment that requires 2 or more employees, make sure you communicate with your colleagues when you are ready to lift up and put the object down. Failure to do so may cause 1 or more persons to drop the equipment and injure everyone involved. Personal protective equipment is extremely important when you are working. BC Hardwood will supply you with your respirator, high-vis vest, and hearing, hand, and eye protection. As an employee, you're responsible for purchasing and maintaining your knee pads, hard hat, and steel-toed boots. This protective gear should be worn at all job sites. Respirators need to be test-fitted prior to using on the job. Keep in mind that any facial injury or dentistry work will require you to be refitted for your respirator, so let your foreman know if you need a refit done. At BC Hardwood, you'll be using company vehicles on a regular basis. It is important to do a pre-trip inspection of the vehicle before driving. This inspection should include checking all mirrors, tires, and lights are all in working order. Also check that a first aid kit and fire extinguisher are in the vehicle. A copy of the pre-trip inspection list can be obtained from your foreman. In some scenarios, you may be required to work or travel alone. For these instances, here are the procedures in place that must be followed. If alone at a site, you must check in with your dispatcher every 2 hours. When driving long distance, you must phone the dispatcher at a halfway point, as well as when your destination is reached. At the warehouse and on-site, you'll be required to use multiple power tools. Some of these tools include nail guns, table saws, edgers, and drum belts. Binders are available to each employee that outline the proper use and safety check required to use. A few things to note before using any power tool are: check all wires and cables for any damage or wear. Unplug equipment anytime you need to change a blade or nail pack. Watch that your fingers aren't too close to the blade or nails. Check that all the safeguards are on. Please ask your foreman to go over the machines with you if you have any questions or concerns. An important component to keep you safe at work is knowing about hazardous materials. Using finishes, stains, and other liquids, you will come into contact with many of these hazardous symbols. All hazardous materials are stored in the finish room at the back of the warehouse. A copy of the MSDS report for all materials we use can be found in every vehicle, as well as online on our G drive. Some of the products contain flammable liquids. When working with these materials, make sure that all ignition sources in the area are eliminated. Any product that has the flammable liquid symbol should be only used in areas that are properly ventilated. Should a fire happen, try to contain it and use the extinguisher. If the fire cannot be safely contained and put out, follow the evacuation procedures and make sure everyone leaves the building. Disposing of hazardous liquids should be done safely by using the proper drums provided in the warehouse. Some finishes can be allowed to harden and therefore can be disposed of in a regular bin. Talk to your foreman about what materials need to be disposed of in the chemical drums. Lastly, we'll discuss exposure control plans. Other hazards you may come into contact with are wood dust, silica dust, and asbestos. For proper wood dust containment, make sure you poly off the area you're working in. A vacuum should be attached to all machines being used. Employees need to be wearing all the proper personal protective equipment as well to avoid exposure. If you come into contact with silica dust, a special respirator is required. This can be obtained from your foreman. Asbestos is also something you may come across. If you suspect asbestos on a job site, stop work immediately and inform a foreman or site supervisor. Asbestos should always be removed by a third-party company that specializes in the safe removal of this dangerous material. Proper testing will need to be done to confirm that all asbestos has been successfully removed before employees can go back to work. Detailed copies of all these exposure control plans will be given to you by your foreman. Again, you may also obtain any of these documents on the BC Hardwood G drive. For hard copies of everything we have discussed today, please ask a manager for a copy of the Policies and Procedures Manual. Also remember to look in the G drive under Health and Safety for any additional information you may need. Thank you for your attention today and helping BC Hardwood be a safer place to work.